Let's bring in Sky News political contributor Chris Uhlmann now. And let's start on the childcare announcement off the back of the RBA opening maybe a little bit of a window of hope for the government that rate cuts could be coming. We will discuss the anti-Semitism in a moment, a serious issue, many other serious matters before the government now. If you had to say the big one in terms of electoral prospects, it is that hip pocket issue.
Yeah, and obviously the government's got to get its ducks in a row before the next election and trying to make some sort of offer to people, something that will be appealing, something that will capture their attention. They seem to think that might be childcare. It's funny though, I know from doing network news for a very long period of time, we're constantly told on the desk, after we got the ratings the next day, they could tell when we did stories on childcare because the viewership would drop off at that particular point in time. Now, I don't know if that's scientific or not, but it's obviously something that goes to trying to do something for the economy as well. That you get mothers back into the workforce, make sure that take some pressure off families. Giving people up to, what was it, $580,000 a year, some assistance with childcare. I know that it becomes universal, but really, do we really need to pay our taxes to have rich people get childcare?
And then, there's that point. There's also this issue of now, if we look at the broader economy, it's a long break between the RBA meeting yesterday and the next one in February, mid-February. It's a long break. So economists, analysts, the RBA itself really going to be judged on their assessment of the economy over the next few months, because if it is softer than they expect, it'll show up dramatically in those numbers. And if it's a lot stronger and there's a lot more behind the spending recently, well, then that'll also show.
Yeah, government, I guess, would be hoping that people open their wallets a little bit at Christmas, and so that there's some money going through the economy. The interest rate at the moment, 4.35%. I was looking back over the historic rates. That should be pretty much about average. Frankly, I know we've got different perceptions now because they were at zero for so long. I remember Wayne Swan back in the day talking about 3% being an emergency low. Remember during the global financial crisis that when we hit 3%, that was an emergency low. So obviously people are feeling pain. That's what the childcare announcement is about today. It is about essentially trying to show people that you care about their predicament, that you understand it, and that you're trying to do something about it. Of course, the best thing they could do is live up to their promise to actually cut the cost of electricity rather than subsidise it.
And we've got the mid-year budget update next week, which the mid-year... Obviously, the mid-financial year, it's coming just before Christmas next week with Jim Chalmers. That's the last major set piece before Christmas. On to the terrible events of recent days, the really appalling attack on the synagogue in Melbourne, now another anti-Semitic vandalism attack in Sydney's eastern suburbs in Wallara. It's appalling stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And I've been casting my mind back on sort of these attacks. We saw them intermittently in the past, but this consistent, sustained attack on a community essentially because of their religion, because they're Jewish, it is absolutely appalling. And of course, leaders should be calling it out. And it's interesting to see the contrast, though, isn't it, between three leaders. So Chris Minns in New South Wales, Anthony Albanese and Jacinta Allen. I think that Chris Minns has shown the way in terms of being very strong about this. I note that he said that he rang the ambassador. Do we know if the Prime Minister has rung the ambassador? Because it's interesting that a state premier should pick up the phone, and you wonder whether or not the Prime Minister should.
Yes, well, and just to be there on the day, I know he's in Sydney anyway, the Prime Minister was in Perth, but that urgency, that sense of urgency is important in terms of the way the leadership is perceived as well.
For two reasons. One, to know that we're throwing our arms around the community and that we're trying our best to make sure that they feel safe as Australians. And the other is to send a really strong message that this is just unacceptable. Now, if they were attacking Catholics or if they were attacking mosques, same thing. You've got to be definitive about this. And whether it's the right take out of it or not, you get the sense of the fact that there's an equivocation inside the Labor Party on this issue because they are judging where votes lie at the next election, where the majority of votes lie, that they're playing to the Green seats and they're playing to those Western suburb seats in Sydney where they think that the sentiment there might be different. Again, I don't know whether I can't look into people's hearts and tell you whether or not that's what they're thinking, but do electoral considerations come into play? And if they do, of course, that would be outrageous.
The Prime Minister and his senior colleagues saying that he was on the phone to the president of that synagogue on Saturday, that he was making various representations to the Jewish community, security briefings with federal police from the get-go. It's been on his radar from the start. Is it just the optics of saying it took a couple of days before he got there? When you it's a big country. Obviously, he was in Perth. It's tricky when you got the Prime Minister of Nauru, who was here as well on Monday. But from your experience around this place, is it better for a Prime Minister to drop everything and just go?
I think it would just be defined, right, to be well defined on where you stand about it. It took a couple of days for him to decide that it looked like a terrorist incident. Now, how could it really have been anything else if you firebombed a synagogue at the time, in the times that we're in at the moment? It's hard to see how it could have been anything other than an act of terror. Now, I know that there's a process, right? But the Prime Minister can say, well, that's what that looks like to me. And I think that the real issue that Anthony Albanese has got, not just on this, but on other issues, is one of definition. He lacks definition. He lacks clarity. And I think it's, as I said the other night, it's like the old thing from Revelations, be either hot or cold, but if you're lukewarm, I'll spit you from my mouth. And too often the Prime Minister seems lukewarm.
Chris Uhlmann, appreciate your efforts this year, and I look forward to seeing you for the election year in a couple of months from now. Have a good break.
Take care.